Are you ready for the learning revolution? The PSI, or Personal System of Instruction, spread like wildfire in the late 1960s, quickly gaining popularity, mainly in university settings. However, within a decade it began to fall out of favor, even though hundreds of research studies found that it is a highly effective instructional model. However, advances in technology have made PSI relevant once again, and some believe it may become the dominant instructional model in the future. In a PSI, the teacher breaks the instruction down into small units with clear objectives and goals. Traditionally, the instruction has been largely text-based, with study guides. However, we will later discuss how this has begun to change in more modern PSI classes. The next key component is that students self-pace through the units. A true PSI has no deadlines other than the date for the final exam. During class meetings, students simply gather in the classroom and work independently on learning the material. Or they don't come to the classroom and they can work wherever they want to. Once a student feels ready, they enter the testing room. However, they must achieve mastery in order to progress. Mastery is usually set as a very high bar, such as 90%. If a student does not achieve mastery on their assessment, they must meet with their proctor. The proctor is usually another student who has already achieved mastery on this unit or perhaps has finished the entire course. The proctor grades the assessment and gives personalized feedback and tutoring to the student. Next, the student reviews the material and studies until they feel ready to enter the test room once again. Once again, they must achieve mastery in order to proceed on to the next unit. They will retake different versions of the assessment as many times as it takes in order for them to achieve mastery. They are not penalized in any way. There are no grade deductions based on their original scores or based on how many times it takes them to pass. Because of this, students in PSI courses generally finish with a higher grade than their counterparts in more traditional classrooms. It is believed that they are also more successful because they cannot tackle new information until they have mastered the old, which is a key tenet in behavioral learning theory. Once they have mastered one unit, they move on to the next, and the entire cycle repeats itself. In a PSI, the use of lectures and demonstrations is primarily for motivational purposes. They are not required, but they also are not available unless students are at the appropriate place in the units. PSI was developed by Fred Keller in the late 1960s. He was inspired by the work of behaviorists such as Benjamin Bloom, who developed a mastery learning model, and John Carroll, who developed a formula which states that learning is a function of time spent. Keller's instructional model seeks to give students all of the time they need to achieve mastery of the subject. PSI was very popular at first, but it fell out of favor by the end of the 1970s. Professors complained about the amount of work needed to create such a course and the amount of grading and bookkeeping that was required. They had to create many versions of each of their assessments and then had to grade lots and lots of quizzes because students were able to take them as many times as they wanted. Proctors helped to take some of the load off, but then the professor was also managing all of these proctors, who may or may not always be doing a very good job. Procrastination was also a huge issue. Students put off their work and then tried to cram in many units at the last minute, which was not very effective for their own learning and also put a great deal of stress on the professor and the proctors who would suddenly be in much higher demand. Today, technology has made the PSI a more viable instructional model. Lessons can be much more engaging with recorded lectures and other multimedia experiences for students. Khan Academy has become the face of the modern PSI. Like Keller's PSI model, students determine their own pace of learning. The instructional delivery includes immediate feedback and progressive hints to tutor students through the material. On their website, Khan Academy explains that their instructional philosophy is based on the work of both Bloom and Keller. They claim that students in mastery learning programs at all levels showed increased gains in achievement over those in traditional instruction programs, students retain what they had learned longer under mastery learning, and mastery learning reduces the academic spread between the slower and faster students without slowing down the faster students. Khan Academy also references personalized learning, as described by Keller in his personal system of instruction, and reference some of the defining characteristics of his system, including self-pacing, mastery based on learning of sequential units, frequent and repeated assessments with immediate feedback, and support from coaches. Khan Academy has gained financial support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Google. Through their coach resources and project-based learning resources, Khan Academy hopes to also partner with instructors in traditional classrooms. With this partnership, many classrooms may become the PSI model that Keller always envisioned. What do you think? Would PSI work in your classroom?